Alright, for today's activity, we're going to work on reflections. So you'll be reflecting shapes. We're going to follow the rules to reflect, and then we're going to work on some practice problems. So today, we're going to work on what is a reflection. But let's first look at the definition that we worked on a couple days ago. A reflection is like a mirror image. It's like your reflection. You can also think of it as being flipped over. Take a look. If I flip this triangle over this dotted line, that's the reflection. Also, if I flip this rectangle over this dotted line, that's a reflection. So let me slide the paper down and we'll look at some other key parts of reflections. When you reflect an image, it always has to be over a line called a line of reflection or a line of symmetry. That's a new word that we're going to focus on. A line of symmetry is what basically to split something down the middle in half. Or on each side of the line of symmetry, both shapes are the same. So like this is your line of symmetry, and each shape on the other side are the same if we reflected them over. So we're generally going to use the X and Y axes to reflect images. We're going to use a coordinate plane. And we're going to use what's called patty paper, which is this waxy paper that I'll give to you that you can see through. Also, we'll learn how to count if you don't like using the patty paper. So we're going to need two different colored pencils. We're going to use one colored pencil to reflect an image over the x-axis, and then use another colored pencil to reflect it over the y-axis. So let's look at the first problem. Using your patty paper, we're going to reflect this image, but there's a couple steps we have to fill out first, and it's labeled over here on the side. Let's see if the screen will... There we go. So first it says label the vertices of the shape. What that means is you just label the corners. So I'm going to call this A, B, and C, just to make it easier on myself. I'm also going to label the X and Y axis. Remember, X axis is always your side to side, and Y is your up and down. So I've labeled the X and Y axis. So to reflect this shape over the X axis, I have to move this shape and flip it down over here. So I'm going to use my patty paper, put it over the shape, and what I'm going to do is use a ruler and trace over the axes for the Y and the X. I'm going to use a pencil and trace over the Y and X axis. I'm going to label it Y and then label the X axis. Alright. The next step is to trace your triangle. So I'm going to trace through the patty paper, triangle ABC. Because now what I can do with my patty paper, now that everything is traced, I can flip it over the x-axis. So I'm going to take it from the top and just flip it upside down. Line the lines back up. That's why I traced the X and Y axis. And now I can see where the new shape should be because of the flip. And with the patty paper, what's nice about the patty paper is that we can trace through the patty paper if we press really hard on it. And it should come through to the other side. Label my points. This is now point A, and this is now point B. So I got a faint outline there, but I can see it enough to trace over it. And I'm going to use a different color so we can tell the difference. This was the one that was reflected over the x-axis. I'm going to use this as red. Remember, when we do transformations, we have to use that prime symbol. So this is A prime, B prime, and C prime. These are the new locations of those positions. Okay, then it says reflect over the y-axis. So I'm going to line up my patty paper like the original after I had traced it. I'm just going to put it over. This time it says reflect over the y-axis. The y-axis is the up and down, so I'm going to flip it this way. So I'm going to take the corner again and just flip it to the side. Line them up. and then use your pencil to trace through again. Press hard so it comes through. And then label your points. This is A, B, and C. So I got a little bit of it to come through, but I have enough where I can see it. A, B, C. I'll use my different colored pencil. A, B, C. Now this is a different transformation, so I'm going to use 2 apostrophes as prime symbols. And that's reflecting. I reflected it over the axes. So you can use patty paper, or there's another method which is counting, which I'm going to show you for number 2. So check out number 2. Same idea. You want to follow your first steps. Label the vertices of the shape. So this time I'll just do it as D, E, and F. Try to mix it up a little bit. Label the X and Y axis. So here's X and here's Y. How this is going to work is I'm going to trace the shape again on the patty paper, and I'm going to show you how the counting works. So you're going to use the patty paper again, trace over the X and Y axis. I'm going to use my ruler so I have a nice straight line. I'm going to trace over the Y axis, label it as the Y axis on my patty paper so I know. Trace over the X axis, label it, and then I'm going to trace over the triangle. D, E, and F. Okay, so it says the first thing is to reflect over the x-axis. Remember, this is the x-axis. I'm going to flip it over this way. So again, if you want to trace and use the tracing method, this is what you would do for the tracing method using the patty paper. Now I would just trace through it. If you want to do the counting method though, there's one thing you might notice about how far the points are away from that line that we flipped over. So on the x-axis, the D was 3 spaces above the x-axis. I'll let the screen settle down here. Once I flipped it, the D is now 3 spaces below. So it's the complete opposite, just on the other side of the line. Same thing with the E. The E was 4 spaces directly above the line. When I flipped it, it went 4 spaces directly below. And the F is on the line, so the F doesn't switch. So if you don't want to do the patty paper, you can just count. So I'll use red again. This is 3 spaces above, so I'm going to count 3 spaces below. 1, 2, 3. That's D prime. F winds up being in the same spot because it doesn't move. It's right on there. E is 4 spaces above the line, so I'm going to count down 4 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4. And there's my triangle. That's a reflection. To reflect over the y-axis, you do the same thing. You can use your patty paper. You would flip it over to the y-axis and then trace. It's perfectly acceptable. You'll always get the right answer if you do that. If you want to try the counting method, if that's faster for you, count how far the points are from the y-axis. So E is 2 spaces from the y-axis. So I'm going to count 2 spaces to the right. 1, 2. Starting in the center, 1, 2. That's E double prime. This is a different shape that I'm transforming. Here, D is from the center, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4. And then F is 2 spaces from that y-axis in the center. That's your line of symmetry. 2 spaces to the right. F double prime. And here's our triangle. So I've reflected this shape over the x-axis in red and over the y-axis in blue. Try number 3 on your own and then work on the practice problems that Mr. D has set up for you. Let me know if you have any questions.